Hello everyone and welcome to the Global Entrepreneurship webinar. My name is Sandra Casano. I'm the Director of Recruitment for the Executive MBA program in London, and I will be hosting this webinar. I am joined by my colleague Javier Juanes, who is Director of Recruitment for the Master's program here in London as well. We will both be available to answer questions specific to HALT at the end of the seminar. So a little bit about HALT. HALT continues to grow as the world's most international business school. As you can see, we offer 4 global degrees. We have our full-time MBA, our part-time executive MBA, as well as our master's program with 4 disciplines, which you can see listed on the screen, and a bachelor's in business administration. We continue to have 5 global campuses with the option to rotate in all degree programs, and our student body consists of 140 nationalities. In addition to global expansion, HALT invests a considerable amount of time and energy in finding faculty to provide a unique, innovative experience for our students. A key factor for what we look for in faculty is people with extensive real-life work experience to enhance the classroom. And which leads us today to Professor Michael Grandinetti, who will be taking part in this webinar. Professor Grandinetti is Global Discipline Lead for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at HALT. He has been named Professor of the Week by the Financial Times, as well as being named Professor of the Year in 2012 and 13. Professor Grandinetti worked at McKinsey & Company and currently serves as Senior Advisor to businesses, universities, and governments on a broad range of strategic innovation, marketing, and commercialization issues. It's our pleasure to have Professor Grandinetti join us today, and I'll turn this over to him to continue on with the webinar.
Thank you, Cassandra. Okay, I'm going to So hello everyone. I realize that we have people on this webinar from across the world. It's my pleasure to have a chance to share some of my experiences with you with the theme of today's talk, which is how to succeed as a global entrepreneur. And there are really 3 key takeaways that I want to leave you with before we wrap up. The first is, why is there such a massive movement toward entrepreneurship across the globe? Secondly, what do you need to succeed as an entrepreneur if this is a path that you want to pursue? And then finally, how might HALT help you to achieve success in your chosen career path as an entrepreneur? So what I wanted to do is spend some time, because I know when I come to HALT campuses around the world, many of our students and many of our recent graduates are working on a dream, and their dream is to have the autonomy and the independence and the freedom to bring their passion, their ideas into the marketplace. So with regard to my background, just a little bit more so you have a sense as to what my experiences have been. Since I left McKinsey, I have been involved, really immersed in the world of the startup. I've been involved in the formation of 7 US-based venture capital-backed software startups, 2 of which we took public on the NASDAQ, 5 of which were acquired by large strategic acquirers like IBM, like AT&T. I've also been a professor of entrepreneurship, not only at HALT, but at the MIT Sloan School of Management since the mid-1990s. And I'm very actively involved in some of the top accelerators in the world, including a number of European accelerators, including Seed Camp and Startup Bootcamp, as well as the Founder Institute, which is the most global accelerator that we have today. So with regard to what is happening, I say this with complete sincerity. There has never been a better time to be an entrepreneur. And I will explain why I want to make that statement to you, but the important point is that countries, governments, regions are providing massive resources as we deal with the new normal economy to support entrepreneurship and to reinvigorate their local economic growth engines. So this period that we are in is very similar to that period in Italy, in Florence, Italy, in the Middle Ages, where we truly saw a renaissance happening, where creativity flourished. And that's exactly where we are again. But the important point to note is that Silicon Valley is not a place anymore. It is a mindset. And we can build, and we do build, great companies everywhere. So about 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of being invited to speak and lead an all-day accelerator rally at the International Startup Festival in beautiful Montreal. For some of you in Europe who may be paying attention to such things, you'll note that Google Ventures just announced in the last week that they are launching a $100 million European venture capital fund. And that is because of the success of a number of European-born startups like Spotify, like Supercell, of course the recent success of the Candy Crush franchise that went public. So there's a real belief that we can build great companies from anywhere in the world. And so what we're going to go through today is we're going to talk quickly about the new normal economy post-summer 2007. We're going to discuss what is happening and why this entrepreneurial revolution is gaining so much power and what does it mean for you. And then what do you need to be successful? How can we prepare you for that success? I suspect many of you will not recognize the young man in the hoodie, but he is Evan Karp, and Evan started his company Tumblr while he was still a young high school student living in New York City. And for those of you who use Tumblr, you know it well, but he was able to achieve 100 million active users. On the left is a very well-known device. It's the MakerBot replicator. On the right, on the cover of the annual design issue of Wired, is the CEO of Maker. They are very important enablers in this whole Maker movement. So the Maker movement has gone global, and there are many companies making things, and sometimes the things may not seem impressive, but this is a very unique company. The company who is on the cover of Inc. magazine, which is one of the magazines of record for the entrepreneurial economy, is a company called Threadless that uses a fascinating crowdsourced model to tap into the graphic design community's talent from all around the world, and then actually picks one design that they will print onto a t-shirt and sell. It's an extremely vibrant community. The company is wildly successful, generating 30 to 35% profit margins on their t-shirts, which is unheard of. And it really represents a new way of organizing and building companies. Okay? TechSpace is a branded maker space. And they basically provide all of the tools you need, all of the resources you need to make systems, to make stuff. Okay? Now, for a long time, the belief was that manufacturing consumer hardware was a game of giants. It was a game of Samsung and LG and companies coming out of Asia. But today, we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of consumer hardware companies that have been funded. 31 companies in total received almost $1 billion last year, twice the amount in 2012. And we see some very well-known devices, including the GoPro Hero. Some of you may know that GoPro sort of is the camera for the extreme sports set. And they went public recently, and they are moving into content production. We see the Pebble smartwatch, which had raised $10 million on Kickstarter. We see the Jawbone boombox, musical boombox, that has won many design awards, and it's an outstanding high-fidelity system. We see the Nest smart thermostat. The company was acquired recently by Google for over $3 billion. So tremendous amount of new entry into the consumer hardware world. Okay, now let's talk next about social entrepreneurship. I am increasingly struck by the number of young students that I meet that want to start ventures that not only create jobs but have social impact and often positive environmental impact. So there's a huge wave of movement as well into the field of social entrepreneurship. And this is in response to the fact that many NGOs and nonprofits have been unable to sustain themselves economically in light of the 2007-2008 global financial crash. And so there's a strong belief now that the way to address social problems is by becoming financially sustainable. One of the poster children of the social business movement is Tom's Shoes. And the founder, Brad, pictured here, will donate one pair of shoes for every pair of shoes that he sells. It's a very interesting business model that has been replicated time and time again, and it's where you sell your products to more affluent consumers in the developed economies so that you can take the resources that you generate and then deliver against your mission to provide free or extremely low cost and affordable goods and services in emerging economies. Okay? There are also some very talented and passionate young entrepreneurs doing some very socially impactful things. I'm sitting here in my classroom with a remarkable young woman by the name of Hannah Chung. Hannah is a Korean American. She spent half of her life growing up in South Korea and half of her life here. She has created a company which is developing, and what you see us holding is not just a cute little teddy bear, it's a personal robot designed specifically to educate young children with type 1 chronic diabetes. And so it was designed so that young children have a companion that understands the challenges they face in managing their disease and educating them in terms of how to draw blood to check their blood sugar levels, how to take insulin, what kinds of foods they can and cannot eat while they're going through their normal day. And they have currently placed this wonderful little personal robot, Jerry the Bear, in 2% of all households in the United States with children with chronic diabetes. And they're now in the midst of an Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign to move that up to 5%. And Hannah is a woman who could have done anything with her engineering degree, but she and her partner, Aaron, are committed to helping other people. They're going to take this and now start building personal educational robots for kids with a number of other chronic illnesses like asthma, like autism, like food allergies, etc. Now here's a remarkable woman. The woman on the right, Jessica Matthews, is from Nigeria, and she also is a Harvard graduate. And when she went back to Nigeria to visit family, she was struck by watching young children playing soccer, but they weren't using a soccer ball. They were using rolled up paper and tape. But despite the fact that they didn't have a legitimate soccer ball, they still had the joy of play. And so Jessica came up with the idea of, wouldn't it be cool if we could create a soccer ball that is an energy storage device, that all of the kinetic energy that is used by the ball being kicked and passed could be stored in the device, so in the evening, through a simple USB connector, you can actually use the device to illuminate your home and charge your cell phone. And with that simple but brilliant idea, the company called Uncharted Play was born. And many Champion League soccer professionals are ambassadors for this very interesting company. In Nigeria, we have something known as the Co-Creation Hub. And the founder, Bosin Tinjani, who lives part of the year in London and part of the year in Lagos, has come up with an ecosystem that they are using to facilitate creative thinking, to encourage innovation, to serve as a living lab, and to share skills. And so it's a very powerful movement that has already generated in just 30 months almost 3,500 members. They have started 24 companies, and they invested in a mobile experience lab which allows them to go off and inspire and motivate potential entrepreneurs from across Nigeria. And these are some of the ventures that they have created. One of them provides transparency for state and federal budgets. Another one is a mobile testing platform designed to provide access to students. A third one provides inventory management systems to small businesses. So they're really working to improve the economy and the livelihood of people in Nigeria. Okay? And now let's talk about why we're seeing this movement to entrepreneurship. Okay? And of course, as Darwin said, it's not the strongest of the species that survive. It's the ones that are responsive to change. And people are responding to change. So business schools see large shifts. They're not seeing the same level of demand in manufacturing and finance industries that have been the traditional hiring authorities that have been bringing in recent MBA and master's school graduates. Okay? We're also seeing that high-tech and entrepreneurship has become a far more acceptable choice in many countries. Governments are starting to recognize it as a legitimate career choice and as a way for people to begin to bring growth to their economies. We also see that MBAs want more control over their careers. Another thing that I think has happened is that engineers no longer are driving the economy. When I began doing startups, I have an engineering degree, and those of us who were in the world of the startup in the early 1990s were by and large engineers and scientists bringing technical innovation out of the lab and into the market. But what Steve Jobs has done is he's allowed geek culture to go mainstream. And there's been so much simplification of technology that virtually anyone can leverage the iPhone or iPad platform or the Google Map platform or other platforms like PayPal to create very interesting businesses where the technology is under the covers and the service is what's exposed to the customer. So what many of our MBA students are realizing, if opportunity doesn't knock, meaning if the companies that they thought they wanted to go work for are no longer hiring, build a door to a new opportunity. And that's exactly what they're doing. And many students are heading to either Silicon Valley or the Silicon Valley of Boston or London or Tel Aviv or Haifa or Stockholm or Helsinki or Singapore or South Korea. And MBAs are flocking to tech. And one would think that this is something that's been going on for quite some time, but we've seen a dramatic shift in the last couple of years. So Amazon today is hiring hundreds of MBAs per year, as one example, including product managers and financial analysts, with a significant shift over just the last couple of years. So what does this mean to you? It means that for the first time in history, startups are recruiting MBAs actively, okay? Because they want to leverage your commercial skills, your marketing skills, your financial skills in order to be able to achieve a competitive advantage. And even MBAs from what are known as the top 10 schools are now choosing Silicon Valley over Wall Street for the first time. And so what is happening here? Let's talk more about societal and cultural issues, okay? Entrepreneurship has gone global because of government support, access to capital, access to global markets, and because entrepreneurship has become increasingly popular or increasingly accepted in the pop culture. So if we look on the right, 2007, huge economic crisis and continuing aftershocks that we see to this day in the Eurozone and in other countries around the world. So from a structural point of view, people look at job creation numbers and they realize, just as one example, that almost all of the new jobs that were created since 1996 really were created by new innovative companies. And this is not just an American phenomena, this is a global phenomena. So governments see this, and they are investing in accelerators. And when I say the word accelerator, an accelerator is an institution whose role it is to provide both seed capital and strong mentor support to young entrepreneurial ventures to help accelerate their growth from idea to market. Many governments are also creating public-private partnerships so that they are providing seed money that they then allow intermediaries to invest on their behalf in startups. Many governments are subsidizing microloans and providing tax credits both to the entrepreneurs as well as to the angel investors in VCs that are investing in them. So governments are doing everything they can to stimulate this kind of activity in their home region, home state, home country. Okay? Access to capital has never been greater. Okay, so it's been democratized, and although everyone always says, I need to go see a VC, it turns out that very few people will need to go see a VC in the future. And that is because with subsidized microloans and low-interest government loans and grants, but more importantly, this massive crowdfunding phenomena where in just a few short years, Kickstarter has already distributed over $1 billion, and where many other legitimate crowdfunding sites like Indiegogo and others, WeFunder, are funding the next generation of innovation. The angel movement across the world has also grown dramatically for many reasons. One of the reasons is because people that have the discretionary money to invest are not seeing the kind of returns that they would like to see in holding cash in banks or in the stock market, and they're looking for higher growth returns. So we're seeing a lot more angel money, and we're also seeing the recycling of capital. As young entrepreneurs meet their success, create liquidity, get paid, so when Facebook goes public, or when Twitter goes public, or when the investors in the management team of a company like Spotify or like the folks at Candy Crush go public or sell their company, they're able to recycle that capital and become angel investors. So we're seeing a whole new generation of far younger angel investors investing in their friends and their peers. And in many cases, large universities are providing seed funds as well. So there's a lot of private citizens that are mobilizing support for young entrepreneurs. At the recent G20 summit, they held for the first time a Young Entrepreneur Summit, and we're seeing this as a global movement. We also look at people like the well-known Peter Thiel, who was one of the lead investors in many of the iconic Silicon Valley companies, who's created the 20 Under 20 program, where he actually gives young entrepreneurs $1 million to start a company based on a big idea that has huge social relevance. Now, let's shift a little bit and look at access to global markets. Many of you probably know Etsy. Etsy is a Brooklyn, New York company that has given both voice and market access to craftspeople from all around the world. No longer do you have to go down to the village square, roll out a blanket and put your wares on the blanket and sell to just those people that you live in the same general area. Etsy now has given you access to a global market. Other very interesting business models like Quirky. Quirky is a huge global ecosystem that allows anybody to participate in the creation of innovative household products. And so these kinds of multi-sided platforms are a very important access point to the global market demand. Okay? Many of these organizations, like Threadless, like Etsy, like Quirky, also provide mentorship to the members of their community to allow them to be more skilled in basic commercial skills like marketing, like pricing, like inventory management. Okay? And so let's now go back to what's happening in the mindset of those people that are of the millennial generation and who are beginning to seek out new opportunities as they pursue their MBAs. Okay, first let's look at pop culture. There's no question that many of you have used some of the more popular enabling platforms like Airbnb, who is clearly a tremendous global brand. And when I ask my students who's used Airbnb, almost 100% of the hands go up, regardless of where I may be in the world, including Dubai, including San Francisco, including London. And so many of you also have used Uber, and you know the kind of growth that these kinds of companies have seen. Many of you have seen the movie The Social Network, which dramatizes the story of the founding of Facebook. You've read about Evan Karp and Nick D'Alessio. You understand that this new chat world has become wildly profitable, and that the company WhatsApp was recently acquired for $20 billion by Facebook. It's hard to ignore these kinds of numbers, these kinds of phenomena. So it's really something that people are hyper acutely aware of. Okay? Almost every one of you either is a mobile app developer or knows a mobile app developer. And from a very cold start, we've created a $60 billion economy almost overnight. Okay? There are TV shows that celebrate entrepreneurship where people go and pitch celebrity investors, whether we call it Shark Tank or Dragon's Den or whatever it may be called in your home country, right, which also provides riveting drama and has captured the popular imagination. Even celebrities and famous songwriters. So this is Neil Young, a remarkably agile Canadian singer-songwriter who played with Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young back in the days of Woodstock, is getting in on the act where he's trying to bring high audio fidelity back to MP3s. And he actually went out and set up a crowdfunding campaign for a device. And you can see in the upper right corner, he's holding this yellow device in his hand while he's talking to the American talk show host David Letterman, promoting a device known as Pono, P-O-N-O, which is designed to deliver a much higher fidelity experience than typical MP3 players can deliver, okay, and had a wildly successful crowdfunding campaign to do that, okay. So now let's look at what we believe we see in our students. The millennial generation, people who are really focused on self-actualization, and to quote Steve Jobs, they want to put a dent in the universe. So who are the millennials? I mean, there's been a lot written about millennials, but when you look at what's important to them, you know, making a lot of money is relatively far down the list. They want to be good parents. They want to have a successful marriage. They want to help others in need, right? They want to live a complete life. And so part of that are those people that want to create social ventures, okay, many of them following in the footsteps of great social leaders like Yvon Chouinard, the founder and executive chairman of the company known as Patagonia, which is very focused on protecting the global environment. So millennials are increasingly rejecting large cash offers. For example, in the investment banking industry, where the typical starting salary can be as high as $150,000 USD a year and another $135,000 per year in a guaranteed cash bonus, and turning to things that they think will be more meaningful. And so the tech industry pays significantly less. There's a sign-up bonus, but there's no ongoing guarantee of a bonus, and yet people are voting with their feet. So what is it really about? Well, what we're seeing is millennials are less and less interested in working crazy long hours, where they know that there is limited upward mobility as many of these banks go through a relatively regular round of consolidation. There was a very interesting phenomena called @GS Elevator, and this was someone who was actually tweeting about what he was hearing in the elevators and hallways of Goldman Sachs. and he quickly, within just a couple of weeks, had 650,000 followers jump on board as he talked about what that lifestyle was all about. Okay, and for better or worse, to put it very bluntly, this is sort of the conclusion that one draws when one looks at that tweet stream. So what we're seeing here, again, Silicon Valley is not a place, it's a mindset, is that there is a culture. And that culture is in London, it's in Berlin, it's in Singapore, it's in Seoul, South Korea, it's in Oceania, it's everywhere. It's in places in Latin and Central America. And that mindset is we want to build interesting companies that put a dent in the universe. So millennial priorities really map to the Silicon Valley mindset culture. And this is a plaque denoting the birthplace of Silicon Valley. This is the famous Hewlett-Packard garage. I was fortunate enough to work for Hewlett-Packard in Silicon Valley as an engineer directly out of my undergraduate university engineering training. And they brought a completely new way of working to the world. No longer were there executive parking spots and dining rooms and washrooms, but it was where people were judged based on their contributions to the company and its success. High level of flexibility, high level of respect for individuals, really what we call today as a meritocracy. And you can gain rapid increases in responsibility if you get your work done. Okay? And that culture has really propagated like a small pebble propagating out of the pond. That type of culture has propagated across innovation clusters around the world. Okay? So, you live and die by the sword. And many young students, young entrepreneurs tell me they want autonomy. And so you have the autonomy to be free, to not have a boss. Although, yes, you will have to answer to your investors, but that's a different discussion. But you don't get fired, the market fires you. If the market deems that the product or service that you have created is not relevant, then the market will say so because they will not purchase your product. So it's a very different dynamic. Okay? So now let's transition into the skills required to be successful, both individual skills and characteristics as well as some professional skills. Okay? So again, you have to be comfortable with moving into the You Can't Fire Me Club because it has its own set of challenges. Okay? So the question that I often ask entrepreneurs who are thinking about starting a company, are you really ready to quit your day job? Okay? These are some of the personal considerations that you must take into account as you think about going from the garage to going global. Okay? Most importantly, you need to be self-aware. If you are freaked out by change, if you like each day to be pretty consistent with every day before and after, then it's not the right path for you. And I've seen a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs, but they just don't have the personal makeup to deal with the inevitable emotional roller coaster that is entrepreneurship. So I encourage you to be very clear in your own mind and heart about whether or not you think this is the right choice for you. Okay? In order to be an entrepreneur and to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to be passionate about the problem you're solving. Regardless, now I'm going to put this in the words of the legendary Mark Andreessen, the creator of the Mosaic web browser, the founder of the company called Netscape, which was the first consumer-oriented on-ramp to the World Wide Web, and now co-founder and managing director of the most prominent venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. Two very simple hallmarks to success: caring and not giving up, being resilient. Okay? The life of a startup is a bumpy one, and you're going to have moments of euphoria and moments of great depression and stress. And so if you think about the curve, you need to have the kind of personality that is able to shrug off the stressful times and not overly celebrate the euphoric times so that you can run on an even keel. And so that's an important consideration for you to have. Okay? You need to find team members who share your passion and your skills. So with Hannah Chung, who I mentioned earlier, her co-founder Aaron and she shared a concern about making the world a better place for those suffering from diabetes. It's what drives them. Both of them had childhood experiences that shaped those passions. There are many places to find co-founders. A variety of web platforms like Founder Dating, Founder to Be, the Co-Founder Lab. Okay? But many students find co-founders in their classrooms as they matriculate through master's programs. Okay? You've got to be a team player. When you're on a startup, there's very few people and nothing is beneath you. So you have to basically just be willing to roll up your sleeves. Doesn't matter if your business card says founder and CEO. You've got to sweep the floors. You've got to do everything it takes to make that work. Okay? Be very clear about, with this graphic, this is called the hedgehog. And this hedgehog graphic is from Good to Great, which is a great book by Jim Collins. Of course you want to know about what you're passionate about, but you have to be equally self-aware about what you can be best in the world at, world-class at, and then how you're going to build a viable business on top of that. One of the great paradoxes that I see is that many entrepreneurs believe that they have to build significant businesses right out of the gate. They want to solve a big problem right out of the gate. And this is one of the things that they struggle with, because the message is, yes, think about solving a big problem, but continue to refine and frame that problem to something manageable so that you can get some validation in the market, learn what it's like to run a commercial venture, get some momentum, and then continue to earn your right to grow the company as you take on a larger part of the problem. So the mantra is think big, start small and focused, and grow fast. Okay? There's many different ways of building a company. In some instances, entrepreneurs go through accelerators and they show up at what's called demo day, where they, after a 90-day boot camp, they get to present to a room full of sophisticated angel and venture investors. Okay? It's important for those of you who are afraid to recognize that there's no substitute to just doing it. So being in the flow sometimes means harnessing your fear and turning it into an advantage, using some of that energy and making it work for you. Everyone is afraid of failure on some level. It's a universal phenomena. And so many people have overcome it. Talk to other entrepreneurs that have started companies despite resistance from their parents, from their friends, from their bosses, or whoever, and hear about how they thought through their fears and why they were encouraged to finally go act and start what they wanted to start. Okay? You've got to be a communicator. We are living in a pitch economy, and so the ability to present your ideas clearly and credibly is also another very important skill that must be learned to be a successful entrepreneur. There's many people trying to gain access to resources, and your ability to articulate your story is a crucial part of your access to those resources. Okay? The word failure is a word that creates great reticence in many people, but failure is an inevitable part of any startup experience. And I'll just let you read this slide from the great entrepreneur Michael Bloomberg, whose company is the global standard for financial trading desks. He also was the 3-time mayor of the city of New York, stepped down on New Year's Day of this past year. But I think this slide speaks volumes about the kind of mindset you need to continue to learn from failure and improve time and time again. Winston Churchill said it much more succinctly. Success is the ability to go from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. And although he was a statesman, he could have just as well have been a lean startup entrepreneur. Okay? Let's talk about professional skills. What professional skills do you need to go from garage to global? You need to really understand the entire life cycle of a startup, from the initial idea through the seed stage and into the actual growth of the venture and how you're going to be able to manage cash flow, how you're going to manage headcount, and how you're going to manage resources through that entire cycle. Okay? There are very significant methodologies like the Lean Startup that have gone global, and it's essential that you are familiar with these methodologies. Okay? The Lean Startup methodology is aligned perfectly with the quote from Bloomberg: take measured bets, evaluate the results of those bets, refine what works, what doesn't work, try to get work, but fail fast is the mantra. Okay? Tools of the trade. I just completed teaching an elective course here in San Francisco called Disruptive Business Model Innovation, where we looked at Uber, we looked at Netflix, we looked at Airbnb and other current cases. How do you build disruptive business models? Increasingly, the competitive advantage is not in the product or service, it's in the business model. Okay? It's important for you to take these skills and participate in startup hackathons and startup weekends that are being held in regions by you, because it's one thing to have book knowledge of these skills. It's another thing to work in cross-disciplinary teams and put these skills to work. So while you're gaining this knowledge, you need to also get your hands dirty and go practice this and continue to make it more a part of your repertoire. Okay? At Holt, one of the things that I thought was very important was giving our MBA students and our master's students an opportunity to learn how to write programs on the iPad. So in a recent course that I concluded, which was a course on human-centric design, we literally taught our students how to build apps on the iPad. We brought in a very intuitive platform that allowed these students to create these apps after just a few hours of training, and the students felt very empowered to be able to go and do this and share their ideas in the marketplace. Okay? There's also got to be a level of willingness to go into the market and see for yourself. So once these students built these apps, we actually sent them in the marketplace and asked them to test their apps with people that would actually be customers of theirs to see how the customers reacted to the app. And there was a tremendous amount of learning that took place in that process when students realized that their first and often second iteration was woefully inadequate. Maybe the navigation wasn't as they had expected. Maybe the screens were not as clear as they had hoped. And as they went through a couple of iterations, they really understood the importance of going into the market and testing it and seeing it with their own eyes. Okay? Human-centric design is an increasingly important skill. For those of you who know Pinterest, I think Ben Silbermann, the founder, says it best. We start by designing the customer experience first. Only when we really understand what the customer is hoping to achieve, what value they're hoping to derive, then we start to lay hands on the keyboard and prototype in code. Okay? So your curiosity will be fueled by your passion. If you are passionate about solving a problem, then you will have the curiosity to go out and understand what your customers expect to solve that problem, and you will become, in fact, a global expert. Okay? You need to be able to get access to early adopters, early customers in alpha and beta test, and there are many different ways of doing that. Beta List was founded in Holland. It's a great application for people that are looking to get early adopters on mobile apps. Okay? You need to be able to go and raise money. And of course, there are many business plan competitions. This is the MIT 100K competition where I judged for many years. And some of you will find your way to sort of the Champions League within these kinds of competitions in your local communities. Okay? But you need to be very thoughtful about how you access capital. Many young entrepreneurs give away too much equity too early, which puts their business in jeopardy. So the important point is to draw upon non-dilutive capital as you are working through the validation of your business model. And only after you validate that business model do you then start to raise significant amounts of equity capital, because you have created a valuation that allows you to share the equity in the company in a far more palatable way to both you and the founding team. So it's important to be aware of all of the different sources of capital and to take a portfolio approach. And often that means having mentors who have been there and done that before you, who can help walk you through these trade-offs. Okay? There is no question that crowdfunding has created an extraordinary new wave of entrepreneurship. And for those of you who do not know AngelList, AngelList is a multi-sided platform whose primary goal is to match entrepreneurs looking for funds with angel investors looking to make investments in young startups. It is a completely global platform. This thing has had meteoric growth, and it has taken angel investing out of the realm of something that's done on a very localized level and now made it a global activity. So an investor in any part of the world can be drawn to a startup that is on AngelList and reach out and say, I like this idea, I want to investigate further and potentially invest in your company. Okay? It's important to have mentors and advisors, people that have been there and done that can help you avoid the inevitable potholes. And there's many ways to gain access. Of course, the Accelerator Network, some of the places that I talked about mentoring that are all across the globe. And of course, there's faculty members at Holt and a whole range of other ways to tap into mentorship. Okay? These are some of the accelerators that are out in the world today, very global accelerators that are helping startups grow. Okay? So now let's finally wrap up with how can Holt prepare you for success as an entrepreneur before we go to the Q&A. Okay? Holt, of course, is located in some of the biggest innovation clusters in the world: Silicon Valley, lower left, Boston, Brooklyn Bridge signifying New York City, and London, all very robust innovation economies. You've got professors that are out of their mind, like myself, that are very passionate about teaching entrepreneurs, about inspiring in the classroom to realize their dreams, whether those dreams are dreams of a more traditional entrepreneurial nature or whether those dreams are more social venture oriented. Okay? We study current business models in the classroom. And we increasingly are working on very hands-on, very practical skills. In the courses that I teach that are entrepreneurial related, I bring in colleagues that are venture capitalists so that students can actually pitch to VCs and angel investors and get real-world feedback just as they would in the marketplace. This is an example of a course I recently wrapped up where I brought in 10 young CEOs from across Boston, the partner of IDEO Boston, a couple of senior-level executives from the community, and each of these entrepreneurs and executives spent a total of 6 hours with the student team, guiding them through building out their final prototype and helping them to create their final pitch. So we try to bring the real world into the classroom with every opportunity that we have. In the coming year, we have created the Holt Impact Challenge. I have been actively involved in the creation of it. It will be an extraordinary year-long journey into the heart of entrepreneurship where we will take you on a guided tour and we will provide you with a lot of workshops, a lot of content, a lot of mentorship to give you the opportunity to build on an idea that you brought to Holt or that you learned about at Holt and are very passionate about working on, and take you through an entire year's worth of learning and mentoring so that you can pitch that idea at the end of the academic year in Davos, Switzerland, with others that are in the track that you have chosen to be in. No other business school in the world does this, and we are really excited about this new addition to our MBA curriculum. Okay? We also provide challenges, corporate challenges, with large institutions, Fidelity, Intuit, Zipcar, all have brought challenges to Holt students looking to create innovative solutions to problems. This is an example, a photo of our students on the Boston campus at the end of an all-day creation hackathon for Zipcar. We had a lot of fun, and we saw some really great innovative ideas. Hugh Malozzi, a friend and colleague, runs global innovation for Intuit, the makers of Quicken and QuickBooks, named year in and year out as one of the most innovative companies in America, brought us a very interesting social innovation challenge. about the ability to bring a mobile app to farmers in India to improve their lives. And my Holt Masters in Social Entrepreneurship students in San Francisco were wildly engaged and enthusiastic in helping to address this issue. Okay, so we do have a unique MSc program, and the students that come into this program want to be entrepreneurs, but they want to have the ability to make a dent in the universe, and we have a dedicated program specifically to the study of this field. Okay, we also host the world's largest social entrepreneurship competition, which draws many thousands of entrants and ends with 6 global finalists presenting to a staff of, or a cast of luminaries, including the Nobel laureate Mohammed Yunus, the father of microfinance, and a number of very prominent social impact experts. Okay, one of my student teams was a finalist in the Holt Prize last year. Niketa on the left is in India running a pilot, as we see in this photograph, where she is looking to try to help people who live on $2 a day be able to save money on the days when the household breadwinner is unable to work, so that they can have a more even distribution of income that allows them to eat on a daily basis. Okay? This is the entire team absent Niketa, who had not yet arrived, with me and the dean of the San Francisco campus, sitting with the Holt Prize team winners, getting ready to go and pitch at this Clinton Global Initiative annual award in New York City. Okay? Faculty have connections to accelerators all around the world, so for those of you who are looking to move into accelerators in Asia, or accelerators in Europe, or accelerators in the United States, we have the ability to help you get your story heard and give you an edge in getting into these accelerators. Okay? We run a number of on-campus events through our very motivated student clubs, and so we have the Holt Co-Creation Lab. It's a joint venture between both the Holt Venture Group and our San Francisco Net Impact Club, and they have created some very interesting programs that have given our entrepreneurial students a chance to put their skills into practice on campus each and every day. Okay? So we really believe that Holt can be a global launch pad for entrepreneurship. Okay? I'm going to go through very quickly some of our recent alumni that have graduated from our school in the last few years that have started companies. One of them, Lana Duncan, is from Albania. Her co-founder, Tanya Friedman, is from Mexico. They started a company called Style Lend. It's a peer-to-peer lending network where young women lend their fashion designs to other young women who are going to an event where they want to be very stylish. This company is a graduate of Y Combinator, and they are starting to grow. They've gotten great market validation, and the students loved hearing from Lana in the classroom. Okay. Pablo Orlando from Argentina has built goodpeople.com, which is focused on the extreme sports lifestyle. Matthew Ho, who is a parallel entrepreneur from Texas, has created a partnership with Berklee College of Music to provide live video feeds from the music that comes from that world-class music school. Okay, Hudson Consultancy was formed by 2 of my students from Dubai, Vidya and Roshan, who started a business model innovation consultancy after taking my elective course in that discipline last year in London. We've got a number of our students that are working on social ventures as well. Mike Jarrell, who has created Social Coffee, where you can take the spare change that you get from Starbucks or another coffee shop and accumulate that digitally and then send it off to the cause of your choice. Natalie Macus has created a social venture focused on providing maternal health to women in Nicaragua. Jerry Wagner from Luxembourg is creating a company that provides affordable housing for the bottom of the pyramid. And so in closing, what I strongly encourage you to do as you think about working your way toward entrepreneurship and working through the fears of failure is to recognize that you have to find your own inspiration. And this is the quote that inspired the great Mandela to make it through his 27 years of captivity. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. If you really believe you want to start a company, then I encourage you to go do so. because you'll never really know how far you can go until you actually try. So with that, why don't we take some questions?
Great, thank you so much, Mike. So the first question we have is more of a general one, so I'm going to just let everyone know we've been asked several times, will the slides be available to participants after the webinar? The answer is yes, and we will prepare a recording and send out materials of all the slides and send it out sometime next week to everyone that's attended. The next question for you, Mike, though, is from Fernando Dolores, and he asks, we are more than 7 billion people around the world, so probably an idea has already been thought of or created. So what makes the difference between that and a startup?
Well, if I understand the question correctly, there are no real new ideas for the most part. Okay, and the rule of thumb is that there are at least 7 other people around the globe working on the same idea you are. What separates the successful person or team that pursues the idea versus the others is exactly what I try to describe. It's passion, it's resilience, and it's the accumulation of both the personal skills and the professional skills that I've described. If you've watched the movie The Social Network, it was very clear that the Winklevoss brothers, who came from a very privileged family, who were Olympic rowers, had the same idea as Mark Zuckerberg. The difference is Zuckerberg maniacally pursued that idea, and he was ultimately the person that created the global phenomena called Facebook, which, measured by sheer number of users, is the 3rd largest country on the planet. So if you are afraid of starting a company because other people have already pursued the idea, I would encourage you to think differently about it.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Sorry if I lost you there. What do you think is the long-term value of companies such as Twitter and WhatsApp, since in the past it's often been proven that it has a short-term success, such as in companies like MySpace?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question, and there's no doubt that the technology world, when you start to play in the world of advanced technology, there is continuous innovation. And so one of the things that I try to teach my students is, how do you remain innovative generation after generation after generation? And that goes well beyond understanding how to manage a startup. It really gets into leadership and management skills, and it requires that the senior executive team of a company are committed to constantly challenging themselves, to live in the reality of the market and not become victims of their own success. So, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict whether Twitter long-term or some of the other companies that you've mentioned will be the great icons of the future. What we do know is the average half-life of a company has declined from about 75 years to about 15 years, and that's because the world is spinning faster and faster. But at the end of the day, what we see in companies like Disney and Nike and even Intuit is these are companies that continue to innovate and continue to stay relevant generation after generation, but they are absolutely in the minority.
Great. Our next question is from Jasmine Suarez. It is, what are the admissions requirements? I will obtain my Bachelor's of Science in Marketing in May of 2015, and I'm very interested in HALT. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Javier, who can answer that question.
Hello. So some of the requirements for the master programs at HALT will be obviously having a bachelor program, being graduated from a bachelor. Also, the English test will be it could be TOEFL with a minimum of 90, or IELTS with a minimum of 6.5. Also, for the Master in Finance, we also have as a requirement the GMAT test with a minimum of 620. Also, other than that, we normally ask for a minimum of 2 recommendation letters from professors or a manager or boss from some kind of work experience, as well as obviously transcripts from your bachelor degree and diploma.
Great. Thanks, Javier. Just to add to that, also with the HALT profile, outside of the technicalities, we are looking for dynamic profiles that won't just sit in the classroom and sit back and absorb, but really participate. As you could tell from Mike's presentation, it's a very proactive classroom with lots of project work, so that's the type of individual that we're recruiting for. Mike, for you, the next question comes from Fabi Diaz. It is, when is the best time to be an entrepreneur? Is it better to have some work experience first, or should we just start now?
You know, it's a great question, and there's many examples of entrepreneurs that have started without any work experience. Look at Mark Zuckerberg or Nick D'Alessio or some of the young, even the 15 and 16-year-old people I cited, like the young woman from Germany, the young man Pierre from Holland. Work experience is helpful, but there's no experience like specific experience. So if you are motivated to start a company, make sure that you know both what your skills are and your skill gaps are, and try to create a team of people. When you are all bonded together as a team, you're able to have a much more fully formed set of skills. And find yourself a set of advisors that can then advise you. And that gives you a real edge. So yes, experience is good, but experience is not required to begin to start a company. Now, I will say that if you start a company, you become very successful, and you wind up raising money, there's a likely point where the investors might say, well, listen, you've never scaled a company before. We want to bring in a professional manager and have them grow the company, and then you would wind up taking on a senior level role on that team, right? And that's a very good problem to have. If you've scaled your company to a point where they're looking to bring in a senior level executive, then you've done a great job. So if you see an idea that you are passionate about, there's no time like the present to go and pursue it.
Great. The next question comes from Brian Lai. He asks, do startups often patent their ideas for apps? And if so, when is the right time to do so?
Brian, in general, it's not something that the average startup does, because there's so many different ways to create an application. Typically, the companies that patent their apps are developing very big algorithms, so they're working with extremely complex software. But the average person selling an app through the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store is unlikely to invest time and energy and capital in patenting an app. If you're working in a very scientific field, that's a different story, and if that's the case, then you're going to want to work with an IP attorney fairly soon to make sure that the invention that you've created is in fact patentable, and make sure that you get good counsel as to how to create the patents to make them as defensible as possible.
Great. Mike, where's the best place to set up a startup? Is there a big advantage to being based in San Francisco or London in a big city, or more in a small town?
Yeah, I would say in general, especially if you're a young entrepreneur, you want to move into an innovation cluster that has some density to it. And so that could mean in Europe, Berlin or London, possibly Copenhagen, Dublin, right? There's a lot of cities in Europe where entrepreneurs cluster, because entrepreneurs feed off one another. Entrepreneurs are part of a community where they like to share ideas, and so I think it's important to find your way to a cluster somewhere. You know, there's this fallacy that you have to move to Silicon Valley. That is not the case. Now, is it an extraordinary experience for young entrepreneurs to be in the Valley and to see the way that the Valley operates? Absolutely. But if your target market is based on customers closer to home, and you can find the talent and the capital that you need closer to home, then don't feel like you have to pick up and move to Silicon Valley, because there are many other great ecosystems around the world. Singapore is becoming an increasingly strong ecosystem, for example. The South Korean government is investing heavily in entrepreneurship, and Seoul is becoming that kind of city as well.
Great. The next question, what is more important in going about an idea, its commercial viability or its ability to solve problems?
Well, if it doesn't solve problems, it won't have commercial viability. So the important point is to take a very empathic or human-centric perspective on framing the problem. You know, is this a real problem? Now, a venture capitalist will say, is this a big problem? But if you can't solve a real problem, you're not going to get commercial viability. And often what people see is they solve one problem and then they expand. So in the case of Hannah Chung, who created a personal learning robot called Jerry the Bear, the first problem that they solved was providing companionship and education to children with type 1 diabetes. Now you can say that's not a large problem, but what they've done is they've created a platform technology. And that platform technology now can be applied to chronic asthma, food allergies, autism, etc. Right? And so often you wind up slowly but systematically growing your way into solving a big problem by extending the original idea of the product into other applications and use cases.
Great. Mike, Raghav asks, if they bring in a senior level executive, however, does that not lower your power within your own company?
Well, you know, the notion of power, of course, is it's an interesting one. And is it possible to lower your power? Of course. But this is the nature of the startup, right? If you're playing this at the Champion League level, if you really want to do this with a world-class set of players, the enlightened founder realizes that the most important thing is to see his or her venture thrive, succeed in the marketplace. And if that means now giving up your CEO role and giving up some power, then, you know, if you have that level of ambition, that's great. For some people, the title is the most important part. They want to be the CEO. And if it's important for you to retain that CEO title because it makes you proud, it makes your parents proud, then it's possible that you're building not a globally scalable company, but a lifestyle company. And that's a very personal choice.
Great.
But this discussion happens in boardrooms and startups every day, all over the world. And every founder has to make that decision based on what's important to them.
Here's one that probably is going through everyone's minds. So I have so many ideas, but I just don't know how to start up. Do you have any tips?
Yeah, so one thing I would say is if you've never been to a startup weekend or a hackathon, pick the one or two ideas that you are most passionate about. And what happens at the very beginning of that very intensive 54-hour consecutive experience is anybody with an idea gets to pitch that idea in front of the assembled group. And if you pitch it well enough, a group of people will be mobilized around your idea, and you will then get to spend the next 54 hours working on that idea with a highly motivated group of like-minded entrepreneurial participants. That will give you a great sense as to whether this idea has merit, and you might actually walk out of that hackathon with a prototype or a rough cut of a mobile app or something else that will give you a lot of momentum behind the idea.
Great. Mike, just a few more questions. I know we're running a bit over on time.
Cassandra, are you still there?
Yeah, hello? Uh-oh.
Hello?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Cassandra, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that loss. Just a few more questions, about 3 more, because they're really good. But then, of course, we'll provide for everyone an opportunity to email us more questions if they have. But if you can just answer, sorry. What can you advise someone motivated to start a business but has no ideas coming to mind?
Well, it's hard to believe that you have no ideas coming to mind, but what I would say is then you need to think about what's important to you and begin to go to events that are in that field and begin to see how other people are thinking about solving those problems and possibly lending your talent as a co-founder or early team member to other people that are looking to bring their ideas into the market. I often find with my Holt students that they may not be the creator of an idea, but when they hear an idea that they're passionate about, they know it instantly, and then they want to be a part of a team that brings that to life.
Great. So from Andre Duck, he asks, if you're looking for investors, what are the most important criteria for choosing them? Because especially at the beginning, they know that you're inexperienced.
Okay, so there's many ways to answer that question, and I'm going to try to answer it this way first. And what I would say is, it doesn't matter if you're experienced. What matters is you have validated your idea in the marketplace. You have taken a problem that you are passionate about. You have created a solution to that problem. You have given that solution to a group of users, customers. They have used that solution. It has solved the problem in an effective way. And that is what generates interest from any rational investor. Okay? Once you go there, then the way that you choose your investors is based on, one, do they have unique expertise in the solution space? Do they have a track record of investing in growing companies in that solution space? Do they have a similar philosophy to you? Do you have good chemistry with them? Can you see yourself entering into a long-term relationship with them? Because you are going to be in a very long-term and committed relationship. There is no such thing as a divorce in the world of venture capitalists. Once they invest, they are going to be investors until the business either is sold or goes, and even if it is sold, they may continue to be involved or goes public. And so personal considerations are very important, as well as some of the professional considerations.
Great. Final question for this webinar, Mike, is from Diego. He asks, "Hi, Mike. What would you say about the team and the co-founder selection when starting a startup? What to look for and what to avoid?"
Well, you know, I know that this may sound a bit cliche, but you're going to spend a lot more time with your co-founders than you will with your wife or significant other, husband, wife, or significant other. And I'll go back to what we said a bit earlier. I think first and foremost, one, what you don't want to have are 5 people with exactly the same skills. Diversity is power. You want people that bring different functional skills. So if you're really great at marketing, you're going to need someone who's very strongly technical. Okay? If you're very introverted, you're going to need someone who's very comfortable and outgoing and can pitch. Right? That's the first thing. You need complementary skills. You need 1 + 1 = 3. Secondly, you have to share a passion for a problem. Absent that, there's no basis for a partnership. And then finally, you've got to have some level of personal chemistry. You're going to be spending long hours. You're going to be going through a huge emotional roller coaster. You'll have great days and bad days, great weeks and bad weeks. And so you're going to have to be able to continue to weather that emotional roller coaster with your co-founders. And so there's going to have to be some high level of I like them and I respect them that's going to enter in. So this is not something that you can check off the box list. It's something that requires a tremendous amount of thought and self-awareness. And often, you know, you want to almost, you know, have sort of a probationary period where you are testing that relationship. And often what happens is I tell co-founders, go to a startup weekend together. See if you guys can work side by side through the intense experience of a startup weekend and see whether your partnership survives that. Because if it doesn't, there's no way it's ever going to survive months and years of building a company together. But if it does, that's a very good indicator that maybe there's something there.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Hugely informative. There are a billion more questions. We can't get to them all, but we do have opportunities if people want to email us their questions. You can contact us. We are at info.europe@hult.edu. Even if you're not in Europe, if you have a question, we'll field it to our other offices. Or if you have questions specific to Mike, maybe we can send them over and get some answers out with our emails that we send out next week. For those of you that are in Europe and have an opportunity, please come visit us at Hult House. We have our huge summer networking event coming up on Saturday, August 2nd, and it'd be lovely to meet you in person and answer any other questions that you might have about any of our programs. We are here for you. So thanks again, Mike, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thanks, Cassandra. Bye.
Bye.